this client probably thinks that they are providing a good life for this dog right now,
sure.
right? Whether they are or not, whatever, right? But they probably think that they are providing a good life for their dog right now. Okay, so you're both working full-time. I guess the first logical thing is, like, what do you think you would need to do for one of you to move to full-time training dogs? Because that's really your first step, you know? Not necessarily like all or nothing, because you guys do all or nothing, like you're losing both your incomes, and it's like we gotta recoup all of that by taking on like 10x the dogs that we're taking on right now. Where realistically, you can make up one person's income in dog training a lot more easily, and you could do much more than, you know, one board and train, you know? So that really would be, I feel like, your first step. So I suppose, have you thought about that at all, and what's holding you back from doing that? Especially if you have the demand for it right now.
It's the fear of letting the job security go. That's because I look at the market.
I understand.
Like, it's one of those things where it's like a, you know, market crashes or like, let's say we go into recession again, and then all of a sudden people are like, well, I guess my dog will just be aggressive. You know, because that's kind of how it ends up being. And we haven't seen that. That's it. So we haven't seen that decline at all.
How long have you been doing it part-time for?
3 years,
And business has only gone up in those 3 years? Your first step is you got to position yourself to take on more business, right? Because you're never going to be able to make the switch if you're turning away clients. You know what I mean? And you got two ways to do it, right? So like, if you really can only handle one dog, obviously, per round, which is very understandable. I think, you know, having 3 dogs yourself, both of you having full-time jobs, I'm assuming you don't have any staff or anything that works for you to help you out or anything like that. You know, one dog and private lessons is a shit ton of work, right? That's totally understandable. So your two options are either you've got to figure out a way to be able to take on more, especially if you have the demand for it, or prices need to continue to raise, right? Because you've got to start getting to a point where the amount of income you're making off of your dog training is hitting at least close enough to one of yours income where you could step back from it. I think the initial grind the first couple of years is necessary. You guys saw how it was able to grow you to a place where, again, 50, 60K as a part-time job ain't nothing to scoff at. I mean, that's really good, right? But yeah, you're definitely at the point where it's like, all right, you obviously, if you're consistently making that, in a position to turn that into a very sustainable full-time job. I mean, the difference of going from like 50, 60K to like 100, 120 is really not that big. You know what I mean? Like, a couple things right off the rip, like you mentioned, like your one-on-ones, for example. You don't want to, like, you know, you want to help people out. You don't want to be doing programs, stuff like that, that they have to commit to. But at the same time, I think one of the biggest things for us that really helped our revenue like shoot up over the years was as we were nixing the shorter programs and only offering longer ones. So like our one-on-ones, we never really offered single sessions as an option because I want people to commit. I know one session is just not going to be, for anybody, one session is hardly ever going to be enough to truly make the changes in their routines and habits they're going to need long term, right? You might be able to make a lot of progress in one session, but you really need to capitalize on that momentum and work with it, right? So we used to always offer, we had a 4-session program, a 7-session program, and a 10-session program. And the 4-session we kind of advertised as like the dream walk program. Like, you can get into like leash walking or some sort of like really basic issue you might be having. The 7-session program was kind of like, we're obedience training your dog, we're getting into a little bit of behavioral stuff, things like that. And then the 10-session program obviously was like behavioral modification, all of that kind of stuff. So we offered those 3 tiers, right? And we would have pretty even where like people were splitting between predominantly doing the 4-session and the 7-session, and then we would get, you know, 20% of people would sign up for the 10-session program, right? Because obviously it's more expensive, right? So then I remember I was like, all right, well, the 4-session program, it's going all right, but like I really would just love to have more time with these clients. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna nix that 4-session program. And I thought to myself, okay, well, we're definitely not gonna make as much money because that's an easy price, easy low cost of entry for people to get into, you know, probably gonna get less clients, but doing the bigger programs. What we found was we would get the same amount of bookings just in the bigger programs, right? And then same deal, I was like, I remember one day I was like, damn, you know, these 7 sessions are great, but like if I could just have 10 with everybody, that would be awesome. I was like, I'm gonna make the bold move, I'm gonna nix the 7-session altogether, right? Same deal, thought to myself, we're going to make less money off of this, it's not going to go. We wound up doing more business because all those people were fully prepared to commit to the big program. They just had the option of doing the smaller ones, right? So our revenue probably tripled just on our one-on-ones when we made those jumps, just because we were making so much more per client, right? And on top of that, when you look at like a quality standpoint, I was getting more committed clients on top of that. I was spending more time with them, which means the results were ultimately getting better. And because the results were ultimately better, our reviews and our testimonials and our word of mouth was much better as well, which meant we kept getting even more clients on top of that, right? So not that you need to offer a really big package right off the rip, but like board and trains, you're always going to offer as like more of a program, right? You're committing to really working with the dog and then training the owner how to use their training, obviously. Comes at a higher price point, but it's more of a comprehensive program. You can build a better relationship with the dog and with the client and stuff. So why would we not do that with the one-on-ones as well?
And then I guess like with that, like it's kind of similar. Like when did you think, like when you were like, hey, I'm ready to hire another trainer. I'm ready to hire a social media person.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. So as far as the trainer was concerned, so I had like an interesting growth into things because I always say I got lucky to some extent by, I didn't have to like start from total scratch, total green. Like I worked for somebody for a while who did like boarding daycare training and ultimately kind of absorbed the company like from that individual with a partner. So we had kind of a little bit of a revenue stream coming in at that point. And I definitely took a massive pay cut when I went into it. Like I wasn't making very much money off of it, but it was like, we're committed, we're in this, like we gotta grow this thing, you know what I mean? And I did all the training myself, I would say, for the first couple years. And I think I hit a point where there was just too many other things I needed to do on top of the training where it was like, I need somebody to pick up some of this slack. But honestly, when you look at hiring a trainer, one thing I tell like newer dog training business owners is your first couple hires should not be trainers, right? Because let's look at, in your guys' position, what is gonna make you guys the most money and what are you guys the best at? You guys are the best at training dogs probably, right? That's why you guys got into this.
True.
That's why you're building a good reputation, right? So what's getting in the way of you training more dogs right now, which is what's going to make you more money? All the other things, right? So you need to find people to fill the gaps of all the other things that you could hire less experienced staff for, that you're not going to have to pay as much for, as opposed to right off the rip hire a trainer, have them take over your lessons, and you know they're not going to do it as good as you're going to do it initially, unless you hire a really freaking awesome dog trainer, somebody that's going to cost you even more money, you know what I mean? But right now that's not going to happen, right? So you got to find somebody that you could hire an entry-level employee to like start with, like what are the most time-sucking things of like doing board and trains, like running the dogs, feeding the dogs, medicating the dogs, those types of things, obviously, bookkeeping and stuff,
the invoicing.
Invoicing, right, all those kinds of things,
Yeah, the cleaning.
Cleaning is massive, right? Like if you really add it up, like what is the thing that you spend the most amount of hours on? If it's cleaning and running the dogs, damn, if you had a 40-hour-a-week employee that could pick up 40 hours of work that you're currently doing, that's 40 more hours you have to designate to training dogs, which means you could take on another $10,000 a month in business. You get what I'm saying? So you've got to look at it that way, where I think everybody makes the mistake of, I should hire another trainer first, right? The only reason why I'm in a position where it makes more sense for me to hire trainers is because the business has grown to a point where there's so much overall management that needs to be done. That is stuff that only me with the vision of where I want the company to go can really do effectively at this point. That I know that's what's going to make me more money, is looking at the bigger picture of the company, not me training the specific dogs. But that's because I have the overhead at that point to be able to hire really good trainers. You get what I'm saying? But right now, you guys are at the point where you're still growing your reputation and growing your training program and stuff, where you guys need to be doing that. So.
Yeah, because I guess it's true. The biggest things that, right now where
the time sucks.
Because I was doing any of our social media, freaking have time. Like that's what ends up happening is like I still like they're not going to get put up now, I guess, but I've got a bunch of posts from even last summer that just didn't go up because I just didn't have time to actually put thought into the write-up.
Yeah, media is an interesting one. So we have 3 media people. We have Paige, obviously. We've got a guy I do my podcast with, and then we've got a girl that just works from home that like makes reels and stuff. And there wasn't really an exact, like, oh, I knew I was ready for one. I think it hit a point, same deal, where like the media posting was just taking way too much time from me. And like I had a lot of other things I needed to do where it made sense to hire somebody at that point for it. But I did that all myself for a long time, and it's like a full-time job in itself as well. So
that's why our social media is like really dry. You know, like we don't have, we have a few reels, and like you know, I feel bad to be putting clients' dogs, you know, on like reels, like, hey, this dog bites, you know,
sure.
You know, this dog, this dog pees in the house. This is how you fix that, and it's like kind of calling them out. But you know, stuff like that is
it's a tough balance, because I think the clients know and they don't care, and in many cases I think the clients like seeing their dogs featured on social media and stuff.
They get so excited.
You know,
I'm like, do you mind if I take a picture for social? Oh my god, they get to be on your Instagram.
Because we, for the longest time, I would say we used to kind of be like that also. Like, oh, maybe we won't post this one. I don't want it to make the client look bad or anything, but it's not. It's not intentional. They're here for help. You know what I mean? If anything, that's a good thing for them, right? So yeah, I think being mindful of that is important, but at the same time, like not letting it stop you from posting a lot of those things, because those are the things that are going to keep growing your company too. If you do have that biting dog in, right, people want to see that, right? People want to see that. People want to be able to empathize with it and see, oh my God, I'm not alone. My dog's just like that. I've experienced those types of things. What was I going to say? I was thinking something a second ago. And then, you know, you mentioned earlier, these are ones where you got to be a little bit more careful with, but like high-profile clients and stuff, like NFL employee or
that's something I wanted to ask.
You know, like that's great if you could like ask them, hey, do you mind if I post a picture? Like, is it cool if I post some content of this and like tag you in it? All you got to do is ask. Worst they can say is no, right? But that's great. That's the stuff people also really like to see, is when you get somebody like that in and you could tag them and they're like, oh my God, they're working with this dog. It just gives you another level of like professionalism, you know, and it's really good on your reputation with those types of things. But I would say that's something I struggled with a little bit as well, as navigating some of those. But you just ask. All they could say is no. How I would approach it is like, hey, do you mind if I post content of your dog and tag you in it? That's it. You know, it's not like, hey, we're trying to like capitalize on your fame and stuff like that. It's just, hey, I just want to post your dog and tag you in it. Is that cool? Right? And most of them are so okay with it. They're so used to having their shit posted everywhere to begin with. You know what I mean? Like,
and it's good for them too. If they're
it's good for them. It's cool, you know. And again, same deal. Like, they're humans also. They want to see their dog, right? So it's like, yeah, post stuff and tag me in it so I can see my freaking dog. You know? Do you have a questionnaire that you have clients fill out prior to training?
For board and train, we do. Not for private.
This gets back to like the conversation about like programs and everything, anyways. But like, you definitely have that also. Yeah. So like little things like on ours, like we have. Let me just pull it up real quick here, because there's some like really key questions that I think will help you be able to navigate some of those types of things like really well. So like just the first page of it, right? Like our questions are, what are the major issues you experience with your dog? What are the major training goals you want to achieve? How does your dog behave when walking on a leash? Is your dog crate trained? Has your dog ever bitten a person or dog? If yes, please explain. Are there other pets in the household? Has your dog interacted with children? Does your dog resource guard? Have you socialized your dog? Have you used training before? Just a lot of questions like that, and we tell people like be as detailed as you possibly can with it. And that will help us be able to really like, has the dog bit another person before? It's like, yes. It's like, okay, what exactly was the scenario that it happened in? So you could read firsthand yourself and say, oh, okay, this is probably not a dog issue. You know, person did something stupid that got him bit or whatever. Or, oh, this St. Bernard actually just lunges at people and tries to bite them when they're not doing anything, right? Yeah. So things like that can be really helpful for that. And then just the other details that are on it, like it helps avoid, like later on as you start growing and working with more clients and stuff, like you're inevitably gonna run into some clients that like, you know, they said one thing, but then they say later that they didn't say it, and you know what I mean? Like pertaining to either their goals or what the dog has or hasn't done before, where you can reference back. And there's been times people have told me, oh, like my dog's never done that before. He's never resource guarded stuff. And then I just pull up the questionnaire. I'm like, well, looks like you wrote out blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, like you said that.
Yeah. So stuff like that can be really helpful for those types of things as well. Some of these issues, though, might be operational issues on our end. And one thing I've seen from myself as well as other trainers is that with one-on-ones, early on when you're offering one-on-ones, particularly when you're offering a program of one-on-ones, you could lose the client's interest extremely quickly if you don't clearly explain to them how one thing connects to another. Let me kind of explain, right? So let's say a client hires you for resource guarding in the house, right? Or leash reactivity or something like that, right? And we say, okay, your dog is a crazy resource guarder in the house. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go work leash walking for 3 sessions. Then we're gonna work place command for 2 sessions. Then maybe we're gonna go do a session at the park and this and that. And it's like, you know how you're gonna get there. You know, it's like, all right, well, I'm trying to build some leverage, right? And I'm trying to get the owner working with the dog in less confrontational positions and stuff like that. But in their mind, they're like, how does this have anything to do with the resource guarding that I'm struggling with, right? And they can't connect the dots of the pain point that they hired you for and all of these things that they're trying to get you to do, right? Or that you're trying to get them to do. And then for some people, you just lose their interest, and not everybody speaks out and says, hey, I don't understand how this leads to this. For others, you just lose interest and it's like, I got better things to do. I'm just not gonna go to it. Get what I'm saying? Or another example is we had a client recently that has a German Shepherd that lives on like 46 acres, right, on like a farm. And, you know, I remember the dog came in for a board and train, and we obviously worked leash walking and this and that, but I went to their house to go do their send home lesson, and I get there, and I generally have like a curriculum for our send home lesson we put the clients through. And I got there and I was like, nothing in my curriculum is gonna apply to this dog, right? Because generally I would spend the first hour doing place or leash walking and stuff like that. I was like, this dog is never gonna be on a leash, and this dog lives on a freaking farm. They don't need it on a place cot inside all the time. So I threw it all away and I solely focused on the specific things that they hired me for that involved the dog on the property, chasing the cows and doing this and doing that, right? So I think had I tried to get them to do like leash walking and all that, same deal, I would have lost their interest very quickly. And maybe they wouldn't have ghosted me, but they clearly would have been like, I'm not gonna do this, right? I would have come the next follow-up and I would have got frustrated. It's like, why didn't you work leash walking for the last week? It's like, where?
Yeah.
You know?
How do you address having a shitty conversation with somebody where they have to be told, or
to step it up a little bit, right? I think first and foremost, approach everything with empathy for the client initially, right? Because if you go into it too much of the mindset of like, you're fucking this up, right? Nobody likes being on the receiving end of that, obviously. No matter how nice you put it, right? Nobody likes being on the receiving end of that, right? But I could put myself in their shoes and I could say, okay, this client probably thinks that they are providing a good life for this dog right now, right? Whether they are or not, whatever, right? But they probably think that they are providing a good life for their dog right now. So I could at least be empathetic to like, this is probably a lack of knowledge issue, right? And maybe if they had a little bit more knowledge, they would understand why walking the dog a little more is important and providing a little more structure in the house is important and all of those types of things. So before I really grill them over this, let me start by educating, right? And then the third piece of the puzzle is I always try to approach any situation where I'm gonna need to make a big ask of the client, meaning in this case, you're gonna have to ask her to make some pretty big lifestyle changes of providing the structure, going for some structured walks, right, doing things like that. Before I make a big ask, I ask myself, how can I meet them halfway with things, right?
You showed up to somebody's home, and she, I don't know, it was a Samoyed. White. And every surface in her house was covered in teeth marks. Like everything in the house.
Teeth marks, you said.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's like
it ate a hole through
holes through the drywall trying to get out of the house.
To get around the garage door, so it ate through the drywall instead.
Yeah.
And I was like, how often do you walk your dog? And she's like, well, I don't, because he'll get dirty. And we showed her, like, you have to be able to, like, this is a structured walk, and I want you to do this every day. And then she called me, like, a week later, and she's like, so I hired a dog walker, and he just runs with the dog.
Yeah, he just takes dogs for jogs.
You know, and I'm like all these other behaviors that we saw when we were there are also toxic, you know, but, like, if it saves your couch from being turned inside out, that's great, but, like, you're not fixing anything.
Well, so let's use this client as an example, obviously, right? So what specifically did they hire you for?
stop the dog.
To stop the dog from eating the inside of the house.
Yep. Okay. And was the dog doing it when they left the house? Yeah. Was that the issue?
Yeah. She'd go outside. And
she'd go to the garage for a smoke, and then the dog would come through the wall, essentially.
Oh, like meaning like she wouldn't even leave. She just would go outside for a second, and the dog would go fucking crazy coming out.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, and you went in and you asked her obviously about how often she walks the dog, right?
Well, we said like what kind of
structure do you have?
I know it's like kind of a loaded thing because everyone has a different interpretation.
Sure. Of course.
Like,
yeah.
What kind of structure do you?
Yes.
Oh well. I don't know.
Yeah, he gets fed at 5 and 5.
Yeah. That was her idea of structure, was that the dog's fed at a certain time, every single time. Every day.
Okay. So this exact situation, you painted a clear picture of what this dog does. The one scenario is she goes outside in the garage for a smoke break, and this dog goes so fucking batshit bananas crazy that it literally eats through her wall trying to get into the garage. Like, that's insane, right?
Yeah.
No matter if we're providing structure or not, like, dogs that aren't provided structure shouldn't eat through a wall to try to get into the fucking garage. That was like next. You know what I'm saying? Like, even dogs owned by people that do nothing with them should not do that. Right?
Right?
So let's meet him halfway. Let's say, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna set up that scenario. We're gonna stop that problem behavior. We're gonna give you a little relief that you don't have to be stressed out of your mind every time you go outside to smoke a cigarette, that your dog is gonna hurt itself and destroy your house trying to get to you. Then I'm gonna also provide okay, this is a temporary solution for this to gain you some relief while you address the other issues that you have in the house. Does that kind of make sense, right? So a situation like that, I would say, okay, how long is it going to take me to get this dog e-collar conditioned enough where I could recreate that scenario where I leave the house, when the dog starts trying to chew the wall, I can correct him for it, right? 1 session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions, I don't know, however long you guys think that that's going to take you to get the dog to that point. You coach her through, all right, here's what we're going to do, right? We're going to get the dog conditioned to an e-collar so that we could recreate this scenario. We could inhibit the dog from biting through your wall to try to get to you, but since we're going to do that, we also have to start providing more structure and more stimulation for this dog so he's not so neurotic where he feels like he needs to do it in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then by meeting them halfway, right, we could say, oh, well, if the dog is doing it only because it doesn't have structure and stuff like that, you got to fix that. That's how you solve it. But I also know that I can get him some relief and I can stop the dog from doing that. You know what I mean? And by meeting them halfway, they're going to be more likely to meet you the rest of the way. And then at that point, let's say you do that, they're still screwing everything up, right? They're still not providing any structure. They're not even following the plan of how to correct them for chewing through the wall and stuff. Then just real time in the moment, like, hey, what's going on? You know? I don't ever approach it of like, you're doing this wrong. I approach it with the like, hey, I'm worried that there's a disconnect right now, right? Like, I don't know what's happening right now. Like, am I not communicating something clearly enough? Is there something that I'm communicating that you understand but you don't get or you don't agree with, or you know what I mean? Like, just what's going on here? And I approach those conversations totally that way, right? From an empathetic position of how can I do better for you, right? How can I help you understand what you need to do better?
Okay.
And I find people they're very receptive to that usually.
I wanted to ask about like the, like when you have dogs, like, so let's say something stupid, simple, like counter surfing, right? Mm-hmm. You have a facility though.
Yes.
How do you address that?
Well, that's a good point, right? So I look at training not so much about me needing to see firsthand the dog doing all these behaviors and stop them myself, right? I look at like whether you're coming in for a board and train or you're coming in for one-on-ones, I look at the purpose of those is for me to ensure the dog has the skills needed in order to address anything that comes up, and that the human has the skills needed in order to address anything that comes up. So let's say I never see the dog counter surf myself at all. Well, as long as I have taught the owner the skills to communicate a boundary and to consistently, understand how to catch it to communicate that boundary, there shouldn't be any reason why they need me there in order to stop that thing.
I'm sure you hear it a lot too, where people start working with a dog and they're like, oh my God, my dog behaves so well for you, and it's like,
yeah.
Like firstly, I don't have a relationship with your dog, so I came in here from ground zero.
Yep.
And this is it. This is the way it's going to work. I never get upset. It doesn't matter.
And that's a normal, we get asked that almost every single session also early on. Yeah. It's like, wow, like he's so good here or whatever. And I always remind everybody, it's not that there's something magical about us or the facility, right? It's just we make you do things differently, right? So I was talking about this yesterday in the seminar that I was doing. I try to, as like a trainer, I think a lot of trainers are not really mindful of like those first 5 to 10 minutes that you're working with your client in a lesson. What are the consistent things that you're finding you're needing to almost subconsciously coach them to do? Right? And generally what it is either one, make sure you have why aren't your tools on right now, right? 2, actually use your tools if they're on right now. And 3, be a little bit more firm with the tools that you have on right now. Those are, for me, the big 3 things I would say in the first 5 minutes of a lesson, I coach people to make the adjustment of, right? And then as soon as I have them make those adjustments, the dog is perfect then at that point, right? And that's when they say that, oh, he's so good right now. So I try to make sure they are so mindful of those 3 adjustments I have them make. And I'm like, if I need to coach you through these 3 things every time you come here, that means you're not doing them at home, which means that you're not gonna see your dog as good at home as they are here. So just be aware of those. And I make it like a target goal for that week of like, okay, well, this week, your issues you're having are on the walk, right? So make sure the tool is on before you start to walk. No matter how good your dog is doing, make sure it's on, right? 2, make sure that you're actually using it. So consistently set the boundary, don't give them a bunch of freebies. And 3, right, if you're consistently starting it, using an e-collar, for example, at a level 5, and I'm telling you to turn it up to a 25 every single lesson, start at a 25 every single walk you go on. And then they come back the next session and they're like, wow, that really worked. Yep.
Even like for marketing, because like I know your social media following is pretty big. Like, did you find like when you were doing it on your own, did you find you were starting to get that following, or was that like?
So I started getting into doing social media in like the end of 2017, probably. That's when I really realized that it was like becoming like a big thing, obviously, and something I needed to designate time to. And I remember I made my New Year's resolution in 2018 that I was gonna post 3 times a day, every single day for the entire year.
Holy shit.
And I joke half the time that I'm convinced that's why my relationship at the time ended, and I went into like a crazy like mental breakdown basically, because it was like adding an entire full-time job onto everything I was doing. And I stuck with it and I did it, and yes, I saw, like I think at the time I had like maybe 800 or 900 followers or something like that on Instagram, and over the course of the year I went from that to like 6,000. And like that, like when you look at the like going from like a really small number to like that, if you look at compounded, is like really huge, right? So if you look at that percentage of growth, then year after year after year, like you really can explode quickly. And I think social media growth is kind of like the slow burn, like you put in the hard work initially and it's really hard to see the results, because it's like you got 50 more followers, 100 more followers and stuff like that, but it truly does compound if you stick with it, Oh
yeah.
Like we'll look back sometimes. Yeah, we'll look back sometimes and it's like, holy shit, like last year in particular, I think was a year when, like at the end of the year, when we were looking at YouTube numbers and stuff specifically, I think, and we were like, damn, like we grew like almost like 100%. Like even Anish, like yesterday, I think mentioned like when I first started talking to you like a year ago, I think you're like 10,000 followers, like higher. So yeah, the social media is so 1,000% worth it. You gotta like, it feels like the thing that's almost like the throwaway thing of like, I'll get to it when I get to it, but you've got to prioritize it as one of the most important parts of your business,
Well, I guess it's like your exposure, really.
It's your that is your branding, you know what I mean? Like, it's like if like, the marketing department for Coca-Cola just like gave up for a month, like what do you think would happen to their revenue? It would tank, right? Early on, I tell everybody, because it is exhausting to do, start with just post every single day, right? Put it in your freaking phone like an alarm for like 10 a.m. or something like that. And 10 a.m. every day, just post something, and don't overthink the content you're posting. Don't worry about it being this like crazy fancy schmancy thing or anything. Literally go through your phone and it's like, oh, here's this cool 10-second video of some dogs playing or something. It's like, I could do that and put a little caption on it talking about the importance of socialization, And then also, like, if you really have nothing to post, go and look at what did I post 6 months ago that did really well and just repost it.
Oh, okay.
That's another huge hack too. I heard one time on like a Gary Vee like podcast or something, he was talking about, he's like, bands and stuff, they have their greatest hits, right? That people go back to all the time, right? But like we look at content so much different. We don't look at it that way. We look at it like it needs to be something original and new every single time, where like that piece that hit 6 months ago or 2 years ago or whatever it was, it's gonna hit again likely because you already know it's a good piece of content, and this time it might hit a completely different audience.
Do you think it would make sense to like have a physical location.
And like pay the overhead.
Yeah, and like pay the overhead before one of us to, like leaves.
Not before.
No.
Definitely not before. Because like, the only reason why you would want a bigger location is to take in more dogs.
Right.
Right? Or be able to at least cut your travel time down. But like, you're not going to save enough off of cutting your travel time down with the amount of dogs you're working with right now to justify a physical location. Right? So yes, I think it's very important to move to that stage, but you've got to be in a position where it's like, all right, when we get a physical location, we're taking 4 board and trains at a time, right? Or whatever, to increase profitability, or else it doesn't make any sense. Okay. But starting with, like I said, if you could at least have, like I said, whether it's on your property somewhere that you don't even need to build anything, it's just people come to you for the lessons, or you figure out like a park you start doing lessons at and just go do them there or something. Well, the first thing I'll say is retail is not very profitable in the dog industry.
No.
So don't waste a bunch of time and money worrying about having like a place to sell gear and stuff, unless you're doing it, like it's funny, the place I was doing a seminar at yesterday, Canine Academy, like that dude is doing it right now, but he has like all these different manufacturers he works with, like he sources his materials, like he actually makes his own stuff. Yeah. Like he makes all his own equipment, so his profit margins are really good, right? But like if you're just selling like e-collars and like Mendota leashes and like things like that, it's like, it's not even worth the time, the way I look at it. But yeah, no, physical location, like I said, I'm all for it. I need the separation. Like been there, done that as far as grinding it out, and like I'm done with that. Like I need to be able to go home and just be home away from all of it.
That's the thing, like we never shut off.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like we're just like right now we're always.
Yeah.
There are areas in our house that are like just dedicated to.
But then
they're empty when there's not a boarding train.
So then you look at like with a physical location. Let's say you're going to start housing dogs there. You're going to have some extra boarding trains and stuff. Then you either are in a position where it's like you're creating. Yeah, you're making more money, but you're creating a lot more work for yourself because now you need to travel to a location to care for these dogs all the time, right? And obviously that's a whole thing in itself too. So, or you're hiring more employees then to like start caring for the dogs, which means you need to even further ramp up your business to justify bringing on employees and stuff. So a physical location adds a lot more costs than just the rent. And I think that's something that's important to really weigh out. Those are all. Yeah, right. That was an old, I don't remember when I heard that, but that was a long time ago.
Right.
I met him one time. I went to New York for like this little speaking engagement he was doing, like at Wine Library, like his dad's place.
Oh, right on.
And at the time, I had my first company, and we had a couple different locations, and we were kind of like, we had no fucking clue what we were doing. And he was just like, I remember I got to ask a question. I was like the first one to ask a question. And I was like, so like, I've got a dog training company and we've got 3 locations and, I'm just wondering, like, we don't really know what we're doing. Like, at what point do I like bring somebody else in to like help? And he just looked at me and he's like, I think you need to like pump the brakes. He's like, and he was just like straightforward. He's like, I think you need to pump the brakes. I think a lot of business owners look at having locations like having fucking baseball cards. And it's like the more locations you have, the better. But he's like, look at this place, Wine Library. He's like, there's plenty of liquor stores out there that have 27 locations, but this single location probably profits more than all of them. He's like, and that blew my mind, because at the time I was like, the only way to make more money is by having more locations. But in actuality, if you look at all the fine details of your business, just make the business itself more profitable. You guys are in a really good position. You're doing really good work right now. You've got half of your programs really figured out, the board and train side of things. Like, you're doing that great. If you could iron out the one-on-ones, you're gonna find if you are gonna double your income from that alone, right?
Yeah.
Then you just got to focus on making the jump to actually doing it. But you really got to set, like I said at the beginning, some sort of target, right? Like, here are the next 3 steps we need to do, clearly outlined, right? Fix one-on-ones, set our target goal of how much money we need to make before one of us quits, and then target goal of how do we increase our rates or increase our demand temporarily to hit that target goal. You know what I mean? Those are, in my opinion, I'm looking at your next 3 steps.
Thank you.
So that's an interesting thing you just said. So one thing to be aware of, we'll see how he does today. Yeah, you're creating a patterned association of down here, prey drive, chase, grab, you know what I mean? So we generally, and it's hard when you kind of live in a city, right, where it's like there's not as many places that you could go and let him burn off that steam elsewhere, obviously. And we should be able to manage the behavior with the TV with you still doing that. But that sometimes can be how some of those patterns get created, is we just put him into that state of mind, and then it's like he wants to do it down here, and then suddenly it's like there's this thing I'd like to be chasing right on the TV. So let's do this. What pick whatever his favorite show is.
Okay, so I'll show you what here we go. Our Planet.
Love it.
Okay.
Which we've never watched with him until today.
Yeah.
Which I
great show, by the way.
It is. I love it.
Love it.
I love to watch this show. So he usually sits over there with me, and yeah, look at him. He's like, I'm not even gonna look now. So maybe we just like.
Yeah, we'll just hang out, see what we get. Now, I'm going to follow the same exact philosophy as we were following outside, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow him to make decisions. He can do literally anything he wants to do right now except react to the TV, right? Is this normal, the pawing at you?
Not really. He's
kind of a stress response, probably. Yeah,
sure. What's happening right now? Why am I going to be in trouble?
Just make sure right now, obviously, I don't do that. Yeah. Because you're giving into that, right? He's demanding attention. Right. So.
Should I tell him to go do something?
Just ignore it for now. If ignoring it doesn't make it stop, what you could do is you could start telling him no for it, right? So we'll see what we get here. But yeah, I'm going to allow him to make decisions, and then if he makes an improper decision, that being reacting at the TV, we're going to tell him no, and we're going to give a correction, and we're following the same principles as what we did with the leash. The only difference is we're using the e-collar, obviously, right? Okay. And yeah, there we go. The other key with this is we have to make sure it's motivating enough. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm starting at 100. I don't know what he, is motivated by currently right now, right?
Yeah, I've done it at full.
You have for this?
Yeah.
One time, you said?
One time.
Yeah.
And then I was so upset.
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's see what we get. So.
Okay. See, look at what he's doing. He's facing the wall.
Sure. Yeah. Now, you can tell he is pretty tired, right? You said obviously he has a lot of physical stamina, but the mental side of things, that's usually what drains the dogs. And that walk we just went on, we had him thinking so much more than he's used to, which is why he's drained from this. So he may not do anything right now. That's a very real possibility. But that goes to show then, maybe if you just get it under control on the walk also, you may see it impact some of this too. So.
This, you're so right, because he's it's so pumped at whatever, 6:30,
sure.
going down here to play, and that's what's going to happen.
Sure.
And you're going to throw that ball, and I'm going to go crazy, and then I'm going to sideswipe the TV, or he can be in a dead sleep.
Sure.
Down here.
Yeah. And then he hears it, and yeah. Tired man.
He's not. Yeah, this would usually this is an absolute explosion.
Yeah.
So maybe he's not going to do it because he is tired.
We'll try maybe a couple more clips that might be a little more animal noisy, and see what we get with that. But yeah, he's doing pretty well right now.
Do you want to search dogs?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Let's maybe try that. Yeah.
Okay. Look, my hands are shaking.
So he would normally be right here.
Yeah.
And why don't you come over here, Jen, and come up so that he's up the side.
Yeah, you could try that.
Yeah.
Why don't you give that a go?
Where you normally
Why don't you come?
Go on, get up there. I know. Good boy.
Beautiful.
He's like, I'm not looking
at buddy.
TV. I'm going to get in trouble. You're going to get in trouble.
He's looking a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
So you see the whining, that's where it starts probably, right? Okay, so this is a little more what you're kind of used to seeing.
This is
so right now,
he would not come and check in with me.
Yeah.
He would just launch to the
So
TV.
as we're working on this right now, the one thing I want you to be very mindful of, when he's in this state of mind, do not pet him, right? Wait for him to ultimately make the decision of whatever he's going to do, right? And we'll address it from there, obviously.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I think if we just give it like a minute or two, he's going to...
Yeah, it looks like he's kind of ramping himself up a little bit, so
oh, yeah.
We'll see what we get.
He knows that we disapprove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, now we're seeing a little more. So maybe it is the pattern of you over there with him too,
Yeah. He could be in a dead sleep.
Yeah, that's what she was just saying.
He could have not been throwing him.
Yeah.
He'll just look up and see something, and
look, it's his toy basket.
Yeah, I see him going to that, which is interesting. You know. Will he try to like jump on that like ledge and stuff?
Oh yeah. Oh sorry. Yeah. He does that. He jumps right up the ledge. That little Android box that brings in our. He kicks things off, and opens doors.
It's just chaos. Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Like so, yesterday he would have been at the TV. Launching. Yeah. He sees it. I don't know what his deal is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, David was saying he's mentally quite tired.
Okay.
Yeah, he's definitely a little bit more mentally drained from that walk. That was the most you probably had him really working on the walk in a while.
Yeah. So if he doesn't react today as he normally does, and then what would be your suggestion?
We'll create a contingency plan of like, if he does this, do this. Yeah, exactly. Yes. And honestly, one of the first things I probably would start with is I try to pick as clear as possible of things the dog is doing so they could ultimately learn how to avoid doing that thing, right? And that's why I asked about if he jumps up on there. So you would say consistently when he's reacting, he's trying to jump up on there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a consistent thing? Okay.
It's a
that there's a window and there's a dog.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. So our very first thing that we're going to address is paws can't go up on there. Right? And we're going to pick that and we're going to correct that and make sure he understands that that is off limits, right? Every time you do this, you get a correction. So. He is so funny, man.
Well, he is
just full of personality.
Yeah. He is. Honestly, weirdo.
If a different dog comes on screen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we'll get one. Yeah. You're keeping yourself together well, buddy.
Yeah, he's really trying to hold it together.
You're trying your very hardest. There you go.
Because I may have to launch soon.
Yep.
Have a look now.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but it's so funny that he's...
Some of it is a little comical, yeah.
And he's like, I'm not even doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not playing
This is it, but even this is better than charging through the TV.
Sure.
However, this too is annoying.
I understand. I completely understand. Yeah. Well, when they start getting escalated like this, a lot of times I always say they're on the brink of making a decision, right? Yeah. And ultimately, one of two things is going to happen. He's going to continue ramping up with it, or he's going to go down with it, right? So we've just got to wait and see which one does it turn into.
Sort of.
So, Mike, I have a question regarding, like, he knows he's wearing the collar.
Of course, yeah.
And he knows that it's...
So what if when the collar comes off? Is that kind of what you're getting at with it? Yeah. Well, no. I don't want to see it because that's a normal question we get asked all the time. It's like, well, he's not doing it right now because he has the collar on, right? So I always tell everybody how we achieve success without the collar is we've got to get it perfect with the collar. And right now it's not perfect with the collar. And far too often what happens is people try to fade out the tool before they hit a point where it's even good, right? So you're on the brink of still needing it and you're saying, well, let's put it away.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I said before we even went for our walk, one of the things you have to do is you've got to make sure every single time he is in a position where he might possibly do this, that you've got this on right now until you are past it. Then, once you're past it, you can fade it out. So, and that's got to just, if you want to truly get past this issue, that has got to become a part of the routine, you know? And you could even literally, because you're really not using the collar for anything else, like you said, you can literally keep it plugged in right on your desk right there. That way, when you come down here, boom, we pop this on real quick, you know?
And are you suggesting, too, then, that we...
Notice also, sorry for interrupting you, but like he is settling down a little bit, right?
Yeah. About playing down here. Like, should we stop that?
I would say
or
if...
playing, there's no TV on.
Definitely that. Yeah. Absolutely that. Because what will happen is if you're playing with him, you're putting him into that state of mind with this trigger right there.
Yeah.
That's where you'll run into, we call it like redirected reactivity or redirected aggression, right?
Yes.
So definitely TV, no TV on if you're going to be doing it, right? But as long as you see a reduction in it, you know, and you're not seeing it impact it, then it's okay.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Do you sometimes play with him with it while the TV's on? Or while you're doing stuff like this?
All the time.
Okay, yeah, separate those two things for sure. And this is interesting, right? I'm assuming generally if you were down here and you started seeing him do everything he's done so far, you would have already started trying redirecting him or stopping him, right?
Basically what would happen, he would start the launch of
Yeah.
the TV, and he'd be like, No.
Anyone,
yeah.
three of us be like, no, I might grab a pillow.
Yeah.
What?
Sure.
And then he'll race back up here and he'll lay down.
Yeah.
I know I'm not supposed to do that. But I'm going to try it again.
Yeah.
And it's a cycle. It never...
Well, is he chewing on his ball right now? Is that what he's doing?
He wants me to throw it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He's facing it. But, yeah. He's not even...
Right now we see he's kind of self-soothing with his ball. That's fine. Yeah. I'm not going to, create energy with it and throw it, but that's fine. Sure. I've got no issue with that right there.
So if he was launching and going to the TV, charging the TV,
right now,
what would be your correction?
The second, again, I'm creating my criteria of no pause on the thing. So if he went over there, jumped up on it, and put the pause on it, all I would do is tell him no, give him a tap on the e-collar, right? And from there, I would follow through with saying no and tapping on the e-collar, gradually increasing until it hit a level he was motivated enough by where he stopped and he got down ultimately, right? Okay. And then from there, no more correction, right? Yeah. Let him figure out, obviously, where that boundary is. And then if he does it again, same process would follow.
What would be the e-collar setting that you would start with?
I don't know yet. Because I haven't used it with him yet, So every dog's a little different as far as how motivated they are by things. I will say that I generally err on the side of a little higher than a little lower, right? Because your risk of being too low is you play this game of constantly underwhelming him and like bracing him up for the next one, and needing a higher level. Where sometimes, let's say you started at a 10, then 15, then 20, then 25, then 30, then 45. It's like you're going to wind up all the way up, and you prepared him for that level by doing that.
So as a guesstimate, not holding you to the range.
Sure, yeah.
50%?
Probably, I would say generally speaking for this kind of stuff, 50 to 75 is pretty normal.
Yeah.
That's high enough where I know that it is objectively a motivating level, right? But I'm not going right in at like full blast with stuff.
Yes.
And the key is, again, it has to be consistent. It has to be every single time his paws touch that, right? And if let's say I started at 50, right? And it was very apparent that right there in that moment, that 50 did nothing. Next time I'm starting significantly higher than that, 75, 80, right? And we're making that like our baseline of where we start the next time. And this is great. And again, he got himself a little worked up, but then made a good choice again. And we're right back to the same scene that was getting him worked up before, right?
I'm amazed.
So this is good. And interestingly enough, like on the walk, we didn't need to correct him that much. We just needed to put him in a position to make the decision, right? And address the decision ultimately. So very well right now, we'll find that... Yeah, he's doing good. This is great. Yeah, very well right now. We may find again he doesn't do it, and if he does do it, we could correct it easily and we're past it.
Timing-wise, it's like the minute he...
You know this is what he does, right? So I would be sitting here when you're watching TV, boom, this thing right here, have it set at your 50 or whatever, right there, and just wait. And the second you start seeing him get worked up, just, I'm ready, right? And the second those paws hit that, nope, boom.
Right. Okay. So it's the minute he takes off. So if he's
not the minute he takes off. The minute, because right now we're stopping the pause up on that.
That's okay.
So the minute he jumps up on that, that's where the correction is happening.
Where the correction comes.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
And that's what you would start with. And let's say you hit a point where it's like, okay, he's no longer jumping on that. We're past the jumping completely. He's no longer doing it. Great. That's awesome, right? But he's still getting himself super, super wound up, right? Then we would kind of pick the next thing that's clear enough that he can understand to not do it, right? And we would start inhibiting that thing then at that point, right? Okay. Which may be, sometimes we'll see them redirect it where I saw when you were sitting there, he was pawing at you a lot, right? Maybe if we start noticing he takes that energy and he starts like demanding attention or throw my ball or whatever it is out of you, we would pick that as the next thing that we correct for, right? Okay. You mentioned like he'll come and like sit on top of you and all that kind of stuff. If you're just cuddling with him, like that's no big deal, obviously. But if he's all wound up and just paws are going on you, that is something I absolutely would correct for as well.
Yeah. He doesn't usually, he doesn't jump up on me. It's
sure.
more like sits on me.
Yeah.
Like puts his back into me and sits on
sure.
my legs.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I don't love. Like,
yeah.
Like, get out of here. And then the whining and the... Yeah, that's a lot. But this is
great. Yeah. So we know he's capable of doing it, right? He's proving to us right now, whether it's because he's tired or he has the e-collar on or I'm here or whatever it is, he is showing he could turn this off, right? So knowing that, it's your job then to, like I said, ensure consistency of every single time you come down here to watch TV, this e-collar has to be on him right now. Has to be. It's the only way you're gonna get past it, right? And you've got to be in a position where you're not interacting with him when he's in that state of mind. And then if he ramps himself up and then makes the decision of jumping on that, we correct him for that. And listen, now that he's calm, hey, come here, buddy. Come here, hi, dude. Right? So once he's calm, if you want to interact with him a little bit, you can and stuff. But if I noticed that me engaging with him started creating too much arousal where he started redirecting on that again, I would tone it back a little bit again, right? When I see this, like what I'm seeing right now, this just tells me like he's saying this is really hard for me to keep myself under control, but I'm really trying, right? Yeah. And that's why I don't correct any of this, like the whining and the whimpering and stuff, is because he's not doing anything inherently wrong. Yes, I agree, it is a little annoying sometimes, but I know that it will improve. Like, look at that, right? He laid down, he put his head, he's learning to self-soothe and make good choices on his own, right? Yeah. And if I were nagging him right away with that, he wouldn't hit that point, right? No. So this is great. Cool, you can go ahead and turn this off.
Yes, okay.
No, that was good. We'll end on some success with that, Good job, buddy. So that's going to be every time you're down here with him. This has got to be on him. Like I said, I'd recommend just leaving it down here or something, you know?
Keep it charged down.
I'll give that back to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so talked about the TV. So just to reiterate one more time, start in the 50 range, right? Have it on every single time you're down here watching TV. Have it right next to you. The second the paws go, boop, no, tap, right? That is our boundary right now. No pause up on this. You can't jump through the fake window that's here, right? Okay. And then for your walking, you got to let him make some choices, right? And you got to be more firm with your corrections, right? Let him make the choice and then be more firm with the correction for making the incorrect choice. No more micromanaging though.
Right.